You want to escape their trap? Marry me.
Marry me for 1 month, the waitress said to the millionaire, just before his empire collapsed. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support truly means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us get back to our main character. The restaurant lights glowed in soft amber, the kind that made expensive wine sparkle. Forks clinked. A jazz song hummed from the corner speakers. Everything looked calm until the waitress stopped beside table 12, froze, and whispered words that would change both their lives forever. "Do not sign that document," she said. Her voice trembled, but her eyes did not. "The stamp is fake. The ink is still wet." Ethan Ward looked up, startled. The waitress, young, hair tied in a loose bun, apron dusted with flour, was leaning closer than she should. Every camera in the place could see her, and yet she did not step back. Before he could speak, she added something even stranger. "If you want to escape their trap," she murmured, "marry me. Just for 30 days. The man holding a fountain pen worth more than her monthly rent blinked once. "Excuse me?" "I said marry me," she repeated, quietly but clearly. "It will buy you time. 30 days, that is all I am asking." Her tone was insane, desperate, and somehow convincing. People nearby turned their heads. One woman at the next table gasped. A server dropped a tray. Ethan's business partners stared at him, confused. "Is this part of the deal?" one whispered. He closed the contract folder slowly. The pages smelled faintly of chemical ink freshly printed, exactly like she had said. Something inside him twisted. "Who are you?" he asked under his breath. "Ava Monroe," she said. "Waitress. Print shop assistant. And the person who just saved you from signing a $100 million scam." That was the moment everything tilted. Ethan's heart thudded once, hard. Cameras flashed as paparazzi from the event entrance caught the scene: Millionaire CEO and a waitress leaning dangerously close, like a forbidden secret. Hours later, the rumor was everywhere. Waitress proposes to Millionaire during corporate dinner. Social media split in half calling her crazy, half calling her a hero. But in the quiet after the chaos, Ethan replayed her words again and again. The ink is still wet. She was right. The contract he almost signed was counterfeit. Someone inside his company had forged the documents to sell his controlling shares to Helix Group. If not for her interference, he would have lost everything before sunrise. When he found her again behind the restaurant, taking off her apron in the cold night air, he asked, "Why did you do it?" She looked at him, tired but unflinching. "Because I saw a man about to be cheated, and I could not pretend I did not." "You realize what people think of you right now?" he said. She shrugged. "They always think waitresses flirt for tips. Let them think I flirted for justice this time." Close. That sentence hit him harder than he expected. Rain began to fall, soaking the city pavement, streaking the neon signs into rivers of color. She turned to leave, but he stopped her. "You said something else," he reminded her. "About marrying you for 30 days. She hesitated, then faced him again. "You need to prove stability to your board before next month's vote. I read about it in the papers. You need a wife to keep your position." He laughed once, incredulous. "So your solution is—" "What? A fake marriage with a stranger?" Her expression did not waver. "Yes, I already saved your company once. Let me finish the job." Ethan looked at her, the rain sliding down his face, the absurdity of it all tightening his chest. Somewhere deep down, he felt something shift the pull of a story too insane to walk away from. "30 days?" he asked. 30 days, she confirmed. "No feelings, no future, just a contract." He almost smiled. "You realize that sounds like the most dangerous deal of my life." "Then we are even," she replied. "You just survived one." And under the silver rain of New York City, the millionaire and the waitress shook hands, signing an unspoken agreement that neither of them truly understood yet. The next morning, the rain had stopped, but the city still looked like it had been crying all night. The air smelled of metal and coffee. Inside a quiet corner of a downtown cafe, Ethan Ward sat across from the same waitress who had ruined, or perhaps saved, his life the night before. She looked nothing like the woman from the restaurant. No apron this time. Her hair was down, her makeup faint, her eyes sharp. She sipped her coffee like someone who had seen too much, and still chose to stay calm. "I did not sleep," Ethan said flatly. I did not expect you to, Ava replied. He placed his phone on the table. The headlines were everywhere. Billionaire Ethan Ward caught in scandal with Waitress. He scrolled down, jaw tight. My board will crucify me for this, he muttered. Or, Ava said, you could use it. He looked up. Use it? You need a wife before next month's vote, right? They want a family man image? Well, she leaned back, half smiling. Now the world already believes you have someone. Ethan studied her, unsure if she was serious. You are suggesting we pretend to be married? I am suggesting we make the lie official, she answered, her voice low but steady. 30 days. Long enough for your board to calm down, short enough for both of us to survive it. He let out a slow breath. You realize this is insane. She nodded. Completely. But you have tried sanity before. Look where it got you. For a moment, silence stretched between them. Only the sound of the espresso machine filled the air. Then Ethan asked, What do you want in return? Ava smiled faintly. A job, not charity. Something that proves I am not just the crazy waitress who proposed to a millionaire. You own multiple companies. Surely one needs an honest employee. He looked at her, half amused, half impressed. You risked your career for me. You could have walked away. I know, she said softly. But someone once told me that watching injustice and doing nothing is the same as joining it. You, quote. Her tone was so calm that it made him uncomfortable. Ethan exhaled, straightened his tie, and reached into his briefcase. He pulled out a single sheet of paper and placed it between them. Then let us make this fair. A written contract. 30 days of marriage. 5 rules. Ava raised an eyebrow. You are serious? He nodded. Rule number 1. We act married in public. Photos, events, the works. But in private, it is professional. Rule number 2. No emotional involvement. What? She smirked. That one is more for you or me? Both, he said dryly. Rule number 3. Every public appearance, we share one true fact about ourselves. Something real. She tilted her head. That sounds dangerous. It is supposed to be, he replied. Rule number 4. Whoever says I love you first loses the deal. Ava laughed softly. You really have trust issues. Quote. And rule number 5, Ethan said, his eyes meeting hers. If either of us is in danger, the other must help, no questions asked. Ava leaned back, studying him. A fake marriage with real rules. You are more poetic than I thought. He smiled for the first time since the night before. So, do we have an agreement? She hesitated. The cafe light caught her face, and for a second, something flickered in her eyes. Fear, maybe curiosity. Then she reached out her hand. We do. Goes out. They shook hands across the table. The simple touch sent a strange pulse through the air, the kind that only happens when two people know they are about to do something irreversible. As she stood to leave, Ethan called after her. Why me, Ava? You could have just exposed the scam and walked away. She turned, pausing at the door. Because everyone was already watching you, and sometimes saving the wrong person leads to the right story. What? When she left, Ethan sat alone for a moment, staring at the coffee cup she had left behind. A small ring of lipstick marked the rim. He touched it without meaning to, then pulled his hand back quickly, almost embarrassed. Outside, the sun finally broke through the clouds, reflecting off the cafe window. Ethan looked at his reflection, part businessman, part fool, and whispered, 30 days. The game had officially begun. 3 days later, the city forgot about the scandal, but the internet did not. Hashtags with their names kept trending. Photos of Ethan Ward and the mysterious waitress leaving the courthouse went viral. Some called it a publicity stunt. Others called it a love story. Inside Ethan's penthouse, reality felt colder than the headlines. The apartment stretched wide, full of glass and silence. Ava stood near the window, holding the marriage certificate with both hands. Her signature looked too small next to his. So this is it, she said quietly. The most expensive piece of paper I have ever signed. Ethan poured himself a drink. You make it sound like prison. It kind of is, she said, turning toward him. Just one with better furniture. He almost smiled. You are not here to suffer, Ava. You are here to help me survive the next 30 days. Right, she said. The deal. She walked across the marble floor, her heels clicking softly. So, what happens now? Do we take pictures holding hands? Kiss for the cameras? Actually, he said, setting down the glass, we start with breakfast. That made her laugh, genuine and unexpected. You are the first millionaire I have met who uses pancakes as a business strategy. He shrugged. Public image is built one photo at a time. They ate together at the long dining table. He read stock reports. She watched the city through the window, the sunlight reflecting off the Hudson River. For a few minutes, the world felt oddly normal. Then his phone rang. He answered, his expression tightening. Yes, I am aware, he said sharply. Postpone the board meeting. Tell them my personal situation is under control. When he hung up, Ava asked, Do they believe you? Not yet, he said, but they will. She placed her fork down. You know, for someone who makes billions, you do not look very happy. He looked at her. Happiness is not a metric I track. Quote. Maybe you should, she said softly. It is the only one that matters when the numbers fade. He stared at her for a moment before standing up. Come on, we are going out. Out? Where? To make it believable, he said, already grabbing his coat. An hour later, they arrived at a charity gala downtown, filled with camera flashes and champagne smiles. The moment they stepped onto the red carpet, reporters swarmed them. Mr. Ward, is it true you secretly married your waitress? Ava, how did you two meet? Was it love at first sight or a publicity move? Ethan kept his composure, hand resting lightly on her back. We prefer to let our actions speak, he said smoothly. Ava smiled politely, but whispered between her teeth. You enjoy this too much. Just play along, he murmured back. Inside the ballroom, everything glowed gold and glass. A string quartet played near the stage. Couples laughed, posed, and whispered. Ethan guided her through the crowd like someone who had done this 1,000 times. When the chairman of his board approached, Ethan introduced her calmly. This is my wife, Ava Ward. The man's eyebrows shot up, but he extended his hand. Pleasure to meet you, Mrs. Ward. I must say, Ethan never mentioned. Ava cut in smoothly. We like to keep surprises between us. The chairman laughed, charmed. Ethan glanced at her, half impressed, half stunned. As the night went on, they played their roles perfectly smiling, toasting, whispering just enough to make the crowd believe. At one point, while photographers aimed their lenses, Ethan leaned close and said under his breath, You are remarkably good at this. She whispered back, pretending to belong? He hesitated, then said quietly, No, making me believe it too. For a second, they just looked at each other, frozen in a spotlight of fake glamour that somehow felt real. When they finally returned to the car, the city lights blurred past the window. Ava leaned her head against the glass, exhausted. Ethan broke the silence. Rule number 3. Tell me one true fact about yourself. She thought for a moment. I used to paint. I stopped when I realized dreams cost more than rent. He looked at her reflection in the window. That is a good reason to start again. She turned to him. Your turn. My truth? He asked quietly. I do not remember the last time I trusted someone. Neither spoke after that. The car drove through the rain-slicked streets, two strangers tied by a lie that was starting to feel dangerously real. And somewhere, between the city lights and the silence, the line between contract and connection began to blur. By the end of the first week, the act had become routine. Ethan and Ava appeared together at charity luncheons, openings, and business dinners. The media called them the city's most unpredictable couple. Every photo of them looked perfect, his calm hand on her back, her poised smile, but behind the cameras, their conversations were sharp and brief. One Saturday morning, Ava woke up to the sound of voices echoing down the hall. She stepped out of the guest room to find Ethan standing near the kitchen island, phone pressed to his ear. His tone was cold, controlled. I said no, Marcus. The deal is off. I do not care about the penalty clause. He hung up and rubbed his temple. Ava watched quietly before speaking. That was your lawyer, right? Ethan looked over his shoulder. It was my friend. At least I thought he was. She raised an eyebrow. Another betrayal? Another test, he replied. In my world, loyalty expires faster than milk. Ava walked closer, tying her hair into a loose bun. Maybe you are just buying the wrong brand. Go. He gave her a look that was half irritation, half amusement. Do you always have a comeback for everything? Only when someone underestimates me, she said. Ethan sighed. You do realize this is not a fair trade, right? You give me your name for a month, but you are the one people are attacking online. I can handle words, Ava said softly. You handle the world. They shared a look that lasted a beat too long before he turned away, pretending to check his messages. Later that afternoon, Ethan's assistant arrived with boxes of invitations and press schedules. One envelope caught Ava's attention. It was gold and embossed with the words, Ward Foundation Annual Gala. "You are hosting your own charity event?" she asked. Ethan nodded. "Every year, it raises millions for hospital programs. Do I have to attend?" "You are the wife," he said lightly. "It would be suspicious if you did not." She smiled faintly. "Then I suppose I need a dress that says temporary millionaire's wife." He almost laughed. "I will have my stylist send options." That night, the penthouse felt unusually quiet. Ava stood by the window again, looking down at the city. She could see her reflection in the glass, half herself, half someone else entirely. Behind her, Ethan approached, holding 2 glasses of wine. "Peace offering," he said. She accepted it. "You do realize that every peace offering you make involves alcohol?" "It works," he said simply. They stood side by side, drinking in silence. Outside, thunder rumbled far away, soft but steady. Finally, Ava asked, "Why do you do it? All this events, power, pretending everything is fine?" Ethan stared at the skyline. "Because people follow strength, even when it is just an illusion. Maybe they would follow honesty too," she said. He looked at her, almost challenging her to believe that. "You really think honesty can keep a company alive?" "I think honesty can keep you alive," she replied. He did not answer. For a moment, neither did she. The silence grew comfortable, but the air between them changed less like a contract, more like something they did not want to name. Then Ethan's phone buzzed again. He frowned, read the message, and his face darkened. "What is it?" Ava asked. He handed her the phone. On the screen was a photo of them at the last event, her laughing, him looking at her. The caption read, "Ethan Ward's mystery wife caught lying about her past." Ava froze. "Where did they get that?" "Someone is digging," he said quietly. "They found your old address, your part-time jobs." Her hands tightened around the phone. "I never hid anything. They just did not ask." He took the phone back, eyes hard. "It does not matter. They will twist the truth until it bleeds. She swallowed, forcing calm. "Then let them. I have lived through worse than words." Ethan watched her for a long moment, then said softly, "You really are not afraid of anything, are you?" "I am," she admitted. "But fear is not an excuse to stop trying." He looked down at his glass, then set it aside. "You should not have to face this alone." She gave a small smile. "You are forgetting rule number 5. He met her eyes. "If one of us is in danger, the other must help." Ava nodded. "Exactly. And right now, you are the one who looks like he needs saving." Outside, lightning flashed across the skyline. Inside, neither of them moved. The contract still stood, but somewhere between the rules and the rain, something real had already begun to break through. The morning after the article went viral, Ava woke up to the sound of reporters shouting from the street below. Camera flashes burst through the penthouse windows like lightning. Ethan was already dressed, pacing near the window with his phone pressed to his ear. "Pull every interview," he said sharply. "If anyone asks about Ava, redirect to the Foundation Gala. No statements, no comments." He ended the call and turned. "We have to control the narrative before this explodes." Ava sat up on the couch, her hair loose, her voice calm. "Explodes? It already has." "They are calling you a liar," he said, frustration leaking through his tone. "They think you faked your past to manipulate me." "Then let them think that," she replied evenly. "The truth does not stop being true just because people talk louder." Ethan ran a hand through his hair, pacing again. "You do not understand. My investors care about image. They think I let my personal life compromise business. This could cost everything." Ava stood, folding her arms. "And what exactly is everything, Ethan? Your company, your reputation, or the illusion that you have control over either?" Her words hit harder than he expected. He looked at her for a long moment, then turned away. "We are attending the gala tonight," he said finally. "We show up, we smile, we make them believe nothing is wrong. Believing nothing is wrong is how people lose themselves," she murmured. But he was already walking out of the room. That night, the Ward Foundation Gala was brighter and louder than ever. Photographers lined the entrance, their lenses flashing like sparks. Ethan stepped out of the car first, helping Ava out with a steady hand. She wore a black silk dress that caught every flicker of light, elegant and understated. The crowd gasped as they appeared perfectly composed, scandal-proof. Inside the ballroom, everything glimmered: gold chandeliers, silver champagne trays, polite laughter echoing through the air. But underneath it all, tension pulsed like static. As they moved from table to table, Ava noticed the whispers following them. "That is her," someone muttered. "The waitress." Ethan leaned in and whispered under his breath, "Ignore them. I am used to being invisible," she said quietly. "Being noticed is the strange part." When it was time for Ethan's speech, the room fell silent. He stepped onto the small stage, the spotlight washing over him. Ava stood near the back, watching. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice steady, "tonight is about rebuilding, about trust, about purpose. And sometimes, trust comes from unexpected places." As he spoke, Ava noticed something in his tone less rehearsed, more real. He was not defending himself. He was acknowledging her. He looked directly at her as he said, "Integrity is not built from status. It is proven by action." Applause filled the room. For the first time, she saw a flicker of sincerity behind his polished mask. After the speech, Ethan found her near the balcony. "You were right," he said quietly. "Honesty works better than spin." Ava smiled faintly. "You just needed someone to remind you that people still listen when the truth sounds human." Before he could answer, a man approached. It was Marcus, the same associate who had betrayed him weeks ago. "Impressive performance," Marcus said with a smirk. I almost believed it. Ethan's posture stiffened. "What do you want?" "To warn you," Marcus said. "Someone leaked internal documents. Your deal with Helix Group is about to collapse again. And if that happens, you will not be the only one they go after." His gaze slid toward Ava. Ethan's jaw tightened. "Stay out of this." Marcus shrugged and walked away, leaving silence behind. Ava looked up at him. "What was that about?" "Nothing," he said quickly. But his eyes betrayed him. "You are lying," she said softly. "Rule number 3. Tell one truth." He hesitated, then sighed. "If the Helix deal dies, the board will turn on me. They will dig until they find something to blame. And they will use me," she finished. He nodded once. She took a slow breath. "Then we get ahead of them. Together." Ethan frowned. "Ava, this is not your fight." "It became my fight the moment my name was next to yours," she said firmly. For a moment the room around them disappeared, the laughter, the light, the noise. Only the two of them remained, bound by a contract that had begun to feel dangerously close to loyalty. Ethan met her eyes, voice low. "You realize this could ruin us both?" Ava answered, "Maybe. But sometimes, the only way to prove something is real is to risk losing it." The orchestra swelled behind them, the crowd oblivious to the quiet storm gathering at the edge of the ballroom. 2 weeks into their 30-day contract, the line between performance and reality had nearly vanished. What began as a business strategy now looked, from the outside, like a romance. Social media called them the modern fairy tale. The board was finally calming down. Investors were returning calls. Ethan's empire seemed stable again, at least on paper. Inside the penthouse, however, stability was a myth. Ava sat at the piano near the window, her fingers tracing the silent keys. The city outside glowed silver, a mirror of her thoughts. Behind her, Ethan stood watching, jacket off, sleeves rolled up. For once, he looked less like a billionaire and more like a man who had stopped pretending. "You play?" he asked quietly. "Not anymore," she said. "I used to when I thought art could save me." He stepped closer. "Maybe it still can." She turned her head slightly. "You sound like someone who wants to be saved." "Maybe I am," he admitted. Silence stretched, filled only by the low hum of the city. Then Ava pressed one key, a soft note, uncertain but pure. Ethan smiled faintly. "Rule number 3, he said. One true fact." She looked at him. "Fine. I am terrified that this, whatever this is, feels more real than it should." He swallowed. "Then I guess I should tell my truth too." "Go on." "I stopped believing in people a long time ago. You are making that inconvenient." The moment hung in the air like glass, fragile, reflective, waiting to shatter. A knock on the door broke it. Ethan moved quickly, answering to find his assistant holding a tablet. "Sir, you need to see this." On the screen was a leaked email thread from Helix Group, evidence of corruption tied directly to Marcus. Worse, it suggested Ethan had known and hidden it. "They are framing me," Ethan said through clenched teeth. "Marcus planted this." Ava stood beside him, reading over his shoulder. "If this gets out, they will destroy you." He set the tablet down, running a hand over his face. "The board meets in 48 hours. If they believe this, I lose the company." She thought for a moment, then said, "Then we show them the truth before Marcus does." He looked at her. "That would expose everything, including you." "Maybe that is the point," she said. "Maybe the only way to end this is to stop hiding." Ethan hesitated. Ava, you do not owe me this. She met his gaze. You are right. I do not. But I meant what I said at the gala. I will not let them win. God. Her voice was steady, but inside she felt something shift, something she did not want to name. That night, they worked together in his study, surrounded by stacks of documents. Rain fell against the glass, steady and rhythmic. Ava organized files while Ethan typed a statement for the press. At one point, their hands brushed over the same folder. They froze. Sorry, she whispered. Do not be, he said softly. Their eyes met, the air between them thick with something neither rule nor logic could contain. Then she stepped back, breaking the tension. You should rest. You look exhausted. I could say the same to you, he replied. Ava walked to the window, staring out at the rain. Do you ever think about what happens after this? After 30 days? She nodded. He hesitated. I try not to. Because you do not want it to end? Because I do not know how to want anything that does not come with a contract, he said quietly. She turned, and for a moment she almost believed him. Almost. Then his phone buzzed again. Another headline alert. Helix scandal deepens, insider claims Ward paid off witness. Ethan read it, face pale. They are moving faster than I thought. Ava came closer. Then we move faster too. Let us prove them wrong. He looked at her, really looked, and said, You make it sound simple. It is not simple, she said. It is human, he exhaled slowly. And what happens if we fail? She met his eyes. Then at least we failed telling the truth. Quote, Outside, lightning flashed, casting their reflections against the window, two figures standing side by side, caught between lies and honesty. And for the first time, Ethan realized that the woman he had married to save his empire might be the only person who could save him. If you were in her place, risking your reputation to protect someone you barely knew, would you do it? Or would you walk away before the feelings became too real? The next 48 hours passed in silence and chaos. Ethan barely slept. Calls came in every hour, most of them bad news. The leaked emails had spread beyond business networks and reached national news. Commentators were calling it the Helix scandal. Investors were pulling out. The board demanded an emergency meeting. Ava stayed in the background, sorting documents, writing notes, checking facts. She had no official title, no power, but she was the only one who had not left him. On the morning of the meeting, she found Ethan standing by the window, suit perfectly pressed, face pale under the weight of exhaustion. Coffee, she said, handing him a cup. He took it without looking at her. Thank you. You do not look ready to fight, she said. I am not sure I am, he admitted quietly. They think I am guilty before I even open my mouth. Then give them something they cannot ignore, she said. The truth. He looked at her, the faintest flicker of hope in his eyes. Do you really think that still works? I think it always works, she said softly. People just forget how to believe in it. They left for the board meeting in silence. Cameras swarmed the building entrance, shouting questions. Ava walked beside him, calm and composed, even as flashbulbs exploded in her face. Inside the elevator, Ethan exhaled slowly. Whatever happens in there, he said, thank you. For what? For staying. She smiled faintly. I said 30 days. I meant 30 days. When the elevator doors opened, the conference room was already full. 12 board members sat around the long table, papers stacked neatly in front of them. Marcus was there too, smirking from his seat near the end. Mr. Ward, one of the older members began, we have reviewed the evidence. It does not look good. Ethan stood at the head of the table. The evidence you saw was fabricated. Marcus forged documents to make it appear I approved the Helix payments. Marcus leaned back, smug. That is a serious accusation, Ethan. Can you prove it? Ethan opened his folder and nodded to Ava. She stepped forward, placing a printed email chain on the table. This is the original metadata, she said clearly. The timestamps show Marcus accessed the files 2 hours before the supposed authorization. We also found his signature on a deleted draft. The room went quiet. One of the board members took the papers, reading quickly. Is this verified? It is, Ethan said. Our IT department confirmed it this morning. Marcus's smile faltered. You cannot prove intent. Ava looked straight at him. You do not need to prove intent when the lie proves itself. The tension in the room shifted. One of the senior members turned to Ethan. If this is true, then Marcus acted illegally under company policy. Ethan nodded. And I will let the law handle that. But I want the board to know my only mistake was trusting the wrong people. For a moment, no one spoke. Then the chairman cleared his throat. You will need to issue a public statement by tomorrow, but for now, the board votes to reinstate your authority. Ethan released a slow breath. He looked at Ava, and for the first time in weeks, she smiled without hiding it. Marcus stood, his face pale with anger. This is not over, he hissed before storming out. When the meeting ended, Ethan stayed behind with Ava. The adrenaline finally faded, leaving only exhaustion. You just saved my entire company, he said quietly. She shrugged. I saved the truth. The company was a side effect. He smiled faintly. You really do not see how remarkable that is, do you? She turned toward the window. I see what it cost. What do you mean? Now they know who I am, where I come from. The waitress, the fake wife, it is all out there. My life is not private anymore. Ethan took a step closer. I am sorry. She shook her head. Do not be. You told me once that leadership is about authenticity. I just did my part. He wanted to say something more, but the words stayed caught in his throat. Outside, the storm had finally cleared. The city glowed beneath them, washed clean by rain. Ava looked at the skyline and said softly, So what happens now? Ethan's answer was almost a whisper. Now we face whatever comes next. She turned to him. Together? He hesitated, then nodded. Together. For the first time since the contract began, the word no longer sounded like a promise made for survival, but one that might actually mean something real. The next few days after the board meeting felt strangely quiet, almost too quiet. The chaos that had filled Ethan's life for weeks was replaced by stillness. The press had turned its attention elsewhere. Marcus had disappeared from the news, and the Helix scandal was already being buried under fresher headlines. But inside Ethan's penthouse, silence had its own weight. Ava spent her mornings packing documents, cleaning up the last traces of their fabricated marriage. The 30-day contract was nearing its end. She crossed the date off the calendar, only 3 boxes left. Ethan watched her from across the room, pretending to check emails. You are leaving soon, he said finally. That was the deal, she replied without turning around. He set the tablet down. Deals end. Commitments do not. She stopped, her hand hovering over the suitcase handle. You said that line before. I thought it was just something you tell investors. Quote. It used to be, he said quietly. Now I am not so sure. Ava turned to face him. Ethan, what do you want me to say? That I will stay? That we turn this into something real? Because you and I both know this was never supposed to be real. He stepped closer. And yet it became the only thing that felt real. Her heart skipped, but she forced her tone to stay calm. Do not make this harder than it already is. Ethan looked at her for a long moment. You saved me. Not just my company, Ava. Me. And I do not know how to thank you for that. Then do not, she said softly. Just do better with the second chance you were given. He smiled faintly, but it did not reach his eyes. That evening, they attended one last event together, a fundraiser for the hospital wing his foundation sponsored. The same ballroom, the same lights, but everything felt different. There were no cameras chasing them this time, no gossip, no scandal. Just music, laughter, and the quiet awareness that this was the end. When the speeches were done, Ava stepped out to the terrace for air. The city stretched below her, endless and bright. Ethan followed a few minutes later, carrying 2 glasses of champagne. You hate parties, she said without turning. I hate being alone more, he replied. They stood in silence for a while. The wind tugged at her hair. Somewhere below, a car horn echoed, breaking the stillness. You ever think about what happens after all this? She asked finally. Every second, he said. I used to think power could buy peace. Now I know peace only comes when you stop running from the truth. Yes? Ava smiled faintly. That sounds like something a wiser man would say. Maybe I had the right teacher. She looked at him then, really looked the man who had once been all control and calculation now standing in front of her with quiet sincerity. I should go, she said finally. He took a step forward. Ava, do not, she interrupted. If you say something real right now, it will ruin everything we managed to keep safe. Maybe it is time something got ruined, he said. She laughed softly, but it broke at the edges. You still have 3 days left on that contract. He nodded slowly. Then let me use them. The next morning, Ava found a small package on her bedside table. Inside was the old fountain pen she had seen him hold the night they met, the one that almost signed away his empire. Attached to it was a note written in his handwriting. For the woman who stopped me from making one mistake and taught me to risk another. She read it twice before closing her eyes. Later that day, she walked into his office, holding the pen. "You really should stop giving away valuable things," she said lightly. He looked up, smiling. "It is not a gift. It is a reminder." Of what? That some mistakes are worth repeating. The air between them thickened again, half memory, half possibility. But neither spoke after that. The unspoken words lingered, fragile but alive, as if both of them knew the story was not over yet. And outside the tall glass windows, New York moved on, unaware that somewhere high above the city, two people were standing at the edge of something they could no longer pretend was fake. The 30th day arrived quietly, like a secret no one wanted to say out loud. The morning light spilled through the tall glass windows of the penthouse, soft and colorless. Ava stood by her suitcase, the same one she had brought when this all began. The city outside looked exactly the same, but nothing about her life was. Ethan entered the room, already dressed for work. His tie was perfect, his expression unreadable. For a man known for controlling every outcome, he looked like someone facing the one thing he could not negotiate goodbye. "So," Ava said softly, "this is it." He nodded once. 30 days. She smiled faintly. "We actually made it. You sound surprised." "I am," she admitted. "I thought you would have fired me halfway through." "I almost did," he said. "Then I realized I needed you more than I wanted to admit." A silence followed, heavy but not uncomfortable. The contract lay folded on the table between them. The ink on the signatures had faded slightly, like the memory of something that was supposed to end cleanly but never could. Ava reached for the document. Time to close this chapter. Ethan's hand covered hers before she could pick it up. "Ava, wait." "Crate." She froze. "Ethan, do not." "I have to," he said quietly. "I have lived my whole life through contracts. Every deal, every relationship, every promise was a transaction, until you." She looked at him, eyes steady. We both knew what this was. "Yes," he said. "But somewhere between pretending and surviving, I stopped pretending." Her throat tightened. "You are breaking rule number 4. "I know," he said, "but maybe some rules deserve to be broken." Ava stepped back, shaking her head. "Ethan, do not do this. When people like you say things like that, it sounds like forever, but it never lasts." He walked closer, his voice low but certain. "Then let it last as long as it can." She closed her eyes for a moment, as if memorizing the sound of his voice. When she opened them again, there were tears she refused to let fall. "I cannot stay." "Why?" "Because staying would make it real, and if it becomes real, I would not know how to walk away later." Quote. He looked at her for a long time, and in that silence, every word they had not said lived between them. Finally, he reached into his pocket and handed her the sketch she had left on his desk, a simple drawing of a white camellia, pressed between paper. "You left this," he said. "It deserves to go with you." Ava held it gently, the corner of her mouth lifting. "You remembered." "I remember everything," he said. She exhaled slowly, then picked up her suitcase. "Goodbye, Ethan." "Quote." He nodded, but as she turned to leave, he said softly, "Ava." She stopped at the door. "Contracts end," he said, repeating her words from their first argument. "But commitments do not." She smiled faintly without turning around. "Then consider mine fulfilled." And with that, she left. Weeks passed. The scandal faded completely. The board trusted him again. The company recovered, and the world moved on. But some nights, when the city was quiet and the lights of Manhattan blurred like distant stars, Ethan found himself replaying 30 days that had felt more honest than his entire life before them. One evening, while preparing a speech for the next foundation event, his assistant walked in. "Sir," she said, "a package just arrived for you." He opened it. Inside was a small box. A single white camellia lay pressed inside, along with a note in her handwriting. "For 30 days I pretended to be your wife, but every day after I remembered how it felt to be seen. Thank you for that." He held the flower for a long moment before placing it beside the old fountain pen on his desk. Outside, the rain began to fall again, soft and steady, the same sound that had started everything. Ethan looked out at the city, whispering to no one. Maybe some stories do not need forever, just honesty. And somewhere in that truth, for the first time, he finally felt free. If this story were yours, if love came disguised as a lie, would you let it end? Or would you break the contract and take the risk?